Hi everybody, it's Terry Ryder from Hotspotting, talking to you again about real estate issues. There's some figures that came to light this week which discussed some of the growth that's happened in the last 12 months in the Brisbane market. Now, if you've been tuning into mainstream media, probably can be forgiven for thinking that Brisbane hasn't had any growth in the last 12 months or in the last few years because of the fondness for research companies and for media and economists for reporting growth in a particular city with a single figure. This generalised data which says Sydney values are up or down X%, regardless of the fact that a city like Sydney has over 700 suburbs, and what's happening in one market is very different from what's happening in another. So these figures from the Real Estate Institute of Queensland relate to the last 12 months in the Brisbane market, and it shows the folly of that single figure, that generalised data that describes an entire city, because most of the figures describing Brisbane suggest there's been no growth anywhere in Brisbane, and it simply isn't true. You've got to look behind those figures and find the areas where there are growth, because there are always precincts that outperform in any market, and that's certainly been the case with Brisbane. So what these figures from the REIQ show is that in the last 12 months, the Brisbane City Council area, that's the local government area of Brisbane, which is quite large. It covers quite a significant proportion of the Brisbane metropolitan area, mainly what we would call the inner city and middle ring suburbs of the Brisbane metropolitan area. And according to these figures, the overall median price has risen just 3.1% in the past 12 months. But it points out that there are 68 suburbs which have exceeded that level of growth, and some of them are exceeded by considerable margin. So it lists some of the suburbs that have done much better. Indooroopilly, for example, its median price is up 24% in the last 12 months. Seven Hills, the suburb of Seven Hills, is up 18%. Ashgrove, a popular suburb not too far from the centre of Brisbane, is up 17%. Bulimba's up 14%. There's a whole range of other suburbs that are up 10, 12, 13%. Some of them are $1 million suburbs, some are middle market suburbs with median prices in the 700,000 or 800,000s, and also some of them are cheaper areas like Rocklea, the suburb of Rocklea, heading down towards the southwest of the Brisbane city area. Partly an industrial suburb, partly a residential. Rocklea, median price just over 400,000. It's risen 10.5% in the last 12 months. So a number of suburbs have done much better than the overall figure that describes Brisbane. And you've got to find that with all the major cities. You'll find it with Perth, you'll find it with Adelaide, you'll find it with Canberra, everywhere really. So don't necessarily be put off when you read a figure such as you often do with Brisbane saying overall prices are only risen 2 or 3% in the last 12 months and conclude that there's no growth in the Brisbane market. It simply isn't true. There's always outperforming areas, and it's your job as a property investor to try and find those areas and find those places which have good reasons to outperform, to show growth that's superior than the norm, the average. We're expecting a little bit more of that from Brisbane in the coming year or so, because there's improvements in the underlying Queensland economy. There's more being spent on infrastructure in Brisbane. Population growth figures, particularly net interstate migration, is favouring southeast Queensland again. So there's hope that we're going to see more figures like that coming out of Brisbane in the next year or two. So that's it for now. Terry Ryder from Hotspotting signing off. I will talk to you again soon.